a very special event this afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. Today we have the distinct privilege of not only celebrating Dr. Schacht, a visionary leader at the Kresge Hearing Research Institute for 14 years, but also we get to welcome our new director, Dr. Gabriel Corfas. I will share a little more about both of these men later in today's presentation. They will also share their own reflections on the Kresge Hearing Research Institute, past, present, and future. But before that, I'd like to welcome our amazing medical school leader, Dean Jim Williscroft, to present a few comments. Please join me in welcoming Dean Williscroft.
Thank you, Carol, and let me add my welcome to all of you for attending this afternoon. As I was reflecting on this occasion, one of the things that struck me is the privilege we have in working in an institution like the University of Michigan and the University of Michigan Medical School. If you think about it, our history goes back to 1848 as a medical school and 1817 as a university. And during that time, there has been a succession of faculty who have seen really as their responsibility, their vision, their passion to push the frontiers of science forward and to train the next generations of scholars and clinicians. And that's one of the things that we're here celebrating today, because we're celebrating a transition in leadership, but as importantly, the continuity of vision around the Kresge Hearing and Research Institute. A continuity of vision, a dedication to the future that goes back to 1952. So let me share just a little bit of that story with you. In 1952, Dr. Albert Furstenberg was chair of the Department of Otolaryngology. He hired Dr. Merle Lawrence to establish a laboratory in auditory physiology and anatomy located in the brand new Kresge Research Building, which is now that wonderful green space just outside. Buildings come and go, but the people, they're the important piece. 8 years later, in January 1960, the Executive Committee of the Medical School discussed the potential and the prospects for a new interdisciplinary Hearing Research Institute funded by the Kresge Foundation. As the foundation had dreams of an institute dedicated to hearing research with two priorities: to further knowledge regarding the hearing process in both health and disease, and to train investigators in the knowledge gained and techniques developed. Less than a year later, the regents of the University of Michigan officially instituted KHRI. And I have here the minutes from the regents' meeting of October 1960. And so let me read to you the recommendation that led to the founding of KHRA. On recognition or recommendation of the Dean of the Medical School, who at that time was Dean Hubbard, and of the Vice President and Dean of Faculties, the following bylaw establishing the Kresge Hearing Research Institute was adopted. Section 12.34, the Kresge Hearing Research Institute. The Kresge Hearing Research Institute shall be maintained for the purpose of conducting research into the cause and treatment of disorders of hearing. The institute shall be a part of the medical school, an extension of the Kresge Medical Research Laboratories. It shall be in charge of a director appointed by the Board of Regents on recommendation of the Dean of the Medical School and the President. The director of the institute shall be responsible to an advisory committee of the faculty appointed by the Dean and the Executive Committee of the faculty. The chairman of this advisory committee shall be the chairman of the Department of Otolaryngology. The director of the Hearing Research Institute and the chairman of the advisory committee to the Kresge Hearing Research Institute shall report to the executive committee and the dean of the medical school. The advisory committee shall assist the director with respect to questions of space assignment, personnel, budget, and formulation of policies concerning the organization and conduct of the program of the Institute. And it's really quite remarkable since 1960 how the Institute has adhered to those principles, that vision that was laid forth, because the leadership, the titles certainly thereof, even that were in place back then, have changed, but the Institute remains. And then in 1961, November 2nd, at a regents meeting, it was announced by the vice president that the cornerstone laying ceremony of the Kresge Hearing Research Institute has been set for Thursday, November 2nd, 1961. So essentially, a year later, the Institute, the cornerstone was laid, and the rest, as we say, is history. One of the very important things is leadership. And Merle Lawrence, when he established KHRI, really envisioned it right from the beginning as not just within otolaryngology, not just within the medical school, but really as an interdisciplinary institute. That was not the norm at that time. In fact, it ran counter to the norm, and it even ran counter to the recommendation of one of his advisory board members, the Nobel laureate, von Beckersey. So it really took a lot of vision on the part of Dr. Lawrence's part to establish the direction that has been very successful in the intervening years. It is now more than 50 years later. KHRI is one of the leading hearing research institutes in the world. It has a breadth of disciplines and research areas that continue to contribute to the scientific literature, our understanding, and also the two-pronged vision of the Kresge Foundation, training investigators. And so today, it is my great pleasure to thank Dr. Schacht for his leadership, his vision, his talent, his perseverance over the last 14 years as the leader of KHRI, and to really welcome Dr. Corfas, who is stepping into these very big shoes that really are built on a foundation of faculty and leadership and vision that goes back to 1952, and for the Research Institute to the 1960s. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Dean Williscroft, for those wonderful remarks and that wonderful historical perspective. Next, I'd like to invite to the podium Dr. Steve Kunkel, our Senior Associate Dean of Research at the Medical School, for his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I'd also like to add my welcome to those of Jim and Carol for this event here honoring the leadership that has been in the past and will be going forward at the Kresge Hearing Research Institute. Here at the University of Michigan, we take great pride in pursuing innovative science and supporting that innovative science because it improves not only the lives of our patients, but also the lives of our patients' family. When I came here 30 years ago, I remember the Kresge Hearing Institute, and I knew a number of the investigators that were at the Kresge Hearing Institute. What was interesting at that time is that the Kresge Institute had been making landmark discoveries for the past 20-plus years before I even arrived here. So this institute has had a significant historic mark at the University of Michigan. During the last decade alone, the institute's impact can be felt. It's both significant and impactful. They've been studying and making significant inroads in understanding the regeneration of hair cells, in the auditory periphery, as well as assessing disorders of the auditory processing, such as tinnitus. The Institute also can be congratulated historically as it made the first successful clinical trials demonstrating that it's possible to prevent acquired hearing loss. But successes like these do not come without having a significant collaborative spirit, which one can be found in the Kresge Hearing Institute. It's committed to providing the environment that leads to these discoveries. And a great example of that is the collaboration that occurred between scientists and clinicians that led to the cochlear implant research. And it was these researchers that actually provided the first implants that actually improved the lives, again, of patients and their families. The Kresge Hearing Institute's faculty also instilled the importance of collaboration. And it should be underscored that graduates that have gone through and training in the Kresge Hearing Institute are now populating the country with chairs and actually has impact with regards to providing professionals across the world. Perhaps one of the most difficult aspects of managing and running a large research institute is funding. But again, the Kresge Hearing Institute, under the leadership of Professor Schacht, rose to the occasion and were second in the nation with securing funding from the National Institute of Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, pulling in $9 million. As Dr. Williscroft underscored, there is behind every great institute and every great institution are leaders, and there's been a number of them, and we're here to celebrate the leadership that Professor Schacht has shown over the years. In behalf of the entire research community, I, along with Carol and Jim, congratulate you for 14 fulfilling years of service to the university. And I'm also very proud, and I've already met with Professor Corfas. I am comforted, as I'm sure Carol and Jim is, under the leadership of Dr. Corfas, we're in good hands. So again, I'd like to congratulate the Kresge Hearing Institute. They have contributed countless pages to the history book that's unfolded in the medical school, and it'll be very interesting to see the untold stories that will yet be printed in this book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kunkel, for those wonderful comments about the important role that the Kresge Hearing Research Institute has played and will play in the future in the research story here at Michigan. So I'm now honored to be able to reflect a bit on this unique man, if I might say so, Dr. and Professor Jochen Schacht. Preparing this presentation has actually been fun because it reminded me how interesting and how fabulous Yoken is. But first, I want to comment upon the tradition of excellence and how we collectively always stand on the shoulders of the giants who have led this institute before Yoken. Since it opened its doors almost 5 decades ago, the Institute has had only 4 leaders. Pretty remarkable, actually, over 50 plus years. And until recently, only 3. So Dr. Merle Lawrence, we heard about, Dr. Joseph Miller, who is here in the audience, Dr. Jochen Schacht, and now Dr. Corfas. So it's just a wonderful occasion to publicly honor and reflect on all of these wonderful men who have led the Institute. So Merle Lawrence was the first leader and really a wonderful, insightful man. So his wife, Bobby, passed away earlier this year, so that generation has passed on. I had the privilege of meeting and knowing Merle Lawrence as a resident here and as a young faculty member. After many, many years and many, many donors, we are very close to closing the Merle Lawrence Professorship, and we hope that it is only fitting that the director of the Kresge Hearing Research Institute sit in the Merle Lawrence professorship honoring the first ever director. Get this right. So I also wanted to honor Joseph Miller, one of our second extraordinary great Kresge Hearing Research Institute leader. He led the Institute for 16 years, and he has now achieved the status of active emeritus faculty, and he continues to run his research laboratory and conduct important research at the Kresge Hearing Research Institute. His work is trying to solve noise and other related deafness causes by a very novel compound. Until he was named emeritus, he held the Lynn and Ruth Townsend Professorship in Communication Disorders, and he is also co-director of our advisory group, which is the Center for Hearing Disorders at the University of Michigan. And he also has an appointment at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. So welcome, Joe, and thank you for your years of service to the Institute. To the members of the Center for Hearing Disorders who are here, thank you for your efforts in advising us and supporting our research efforts. And I also did want to thank the efforts of our search committee. It was a long-term search to find the perfect director. We were successful, but it took us a while, and I think good things are certainly worth the wait. And members of the Center for Hearing Disorders have also provided very generous support over many years to the Institute, and for that we are very grateful. So now on to Yoken. Yoken has been at the University of Michigan for quite some time. He joined us in 1969 as a postdoctoral student under Bernie Agronoff. He then formally joined the Institute in 1972, hired by Merle Lawrence and Walter Work. In fact, Yoken is the only remaining active faculty member hired by Dr. Walter Work, who preceded Chuck Krause as chair of the department. In 1989, Yoken became the associate director at Kresge Hearing Research Institute, and in the year 2000, he became the director. And it has truly been a remarkable 14 years. This is an interesting infographic that Amanda put together. He has approximately 300 publications. That is a remarkable number. He has more than 100 invited speaking engagements. He has 13 awards and citations. He has 12 honorary or guest appointments. He has served on 8 editorial boards and has been an invited reviewer for 26 different journals, and he has 1 honorary doctorate degree. In addition to these impressive statistics, Yoken also secured approximately, as you heard, $9 million in research funding and has trained more than 60 students and fellows. His research impact has been significant, and I will highlight just a few of his accomplishments to date. In 1997, the Kresge Hearing Research Institute initiated a new program project called Molecular Mechanisms of Cochlear Function and Dysfunction. It gave the Kresge Hearing Research Institute a new programmatic direction and provided a second program project to the Institute, which was really critically important in keeping the infrastructure and the support of the Institute alive. It was multidisciplinary and included investigators from human genetics and molecular and behavioral brain research. And because Dr. Schacht, I'm sure, keeps wonderful records and is a great photographer, we have a photograph actually taken from that era on this slide. And many of you will recognize some of the faces, and even I do as well. Then, moving forward, the first P30 center was awarded to the Kresge Hearing Research Institute in 2002. This was also multidisciplinary and encompassed all University of Michigan laboratories engaged in auditory vestibular research, regardless of department, but it was not restricted to the University of Michigan. It was an outreach program that included auditory programs at not only University of Michigan, but also Wayne State University, Michigan State University, and the University of Toledo. This P30 is still active today and directed by Dr. Altschuler. And again, you can see a 2002 photo of Dr. Schacht's laboratory members. And an aging program project was initiated in 2005. It was multidisciplinary and included the Institute of Gerontology, or Geriatrics and Genetics. And again, we have another fantastic picture, this one from 2005. Under Yoken's leadership, the Kresge Hearing Research Institute made significant discoveries, and he led an extraordinary, and continues to lead an extraordinary team of researchers with a reach really across the world. So, this is kind of a fun slide where you can see more of a decade of Kresge Hearing Research Institute discoveries that are part of press releases that received hundreds of hits and certainly reached hundreds of thousands of people. And it's the work really of a remarkable institute that works together as a great team. I can't talk about Yoken without mentioning his research funding. The research at Kresge peaked I don't remember the year, but it peaked at the level of a $9 million funding, and it became the #2 funding from any center in the country from the National Institute of Deafness and Communication Disorders. And separately, a study out of Columbia University identified Dr. Schacht as being in the top 5% of NIH funding recipients of all time, like all areas of research. That's actually remarkable. That's a remarkable achievement. Congratulations. And that is only the means to the end. The education and the research are really what the accomplishment is. So Yoken has also had, and the Institute, have had a remarkable impact upon education. We have a T32 research program that was established in 1987, and it rescued a physiologic acoustics PhD program. Here is a delightful picture of laboratory members from 1987. The shorts were a little shorter back then than they are today. And it really brought together researchers from across the University of Michigan with departments with the common theme of sensory systems. And the Hearing Balance and Chemical Senses training program exists today with regular lectures that many of you attend and know of. The program also provides important mentorship training for students who are interested in becoming leading research scientists in the fields of hearing balance and chemical senses. The students are trained to obtain academic positions, compete for research funding, and effectively manage research laboratories. The program has trained more than 140 trainees to date, and the program has been passed on to Drs. Pfingst, Corman, and Dr. Shore. Another really novel and important research program was established in 1990 at the Institute, and it is a summer program in research at Kresge Hearing for the hard of hearing. And it provides hard of hearing undergraduates a summer experience in biomedical sciences and computing, and this effort has also been supported by the NIDCD. This particular program has received national attention and multiple honors, including a citation for the promotion of hearing impaired students in professional work experiences by the National Capital Association for Cooperative Education, and it was the inaugural recipient of the Distinguished Diversity Leaders Award here at the University of Michigan. So Yoken also mentors students in his own lab, 62 to be exact. He has passed his legacy of leadership on to his trainees, with many of them going on to hold leadership positions around the world. 8 have gone on to become department chairs. 2 have become directors of hearing research organizations. 1 is now an associate dean for research, and 1 is now editor-in-chief of the journal Hearing Research. This map represents all of the places in the world where Yoken's trainees have come from and have gone back to. There are 18, if you count them, 18 places around the world. It's really quite impressive. Now on to some fun facts about Yoken. Did you know that Yoken is an avid photographer? He took, in fact, all of the beautiful photographs I'm about to show you. This is a peasant woman from Tibet. It's a great picture. Mother and daughter in Peru. Ceremonial dancers in Bhutan. Mourning over the grasslands in Mongolia. One of my personal favorites. I might need a copy of this one. Evening falling on the Sahara in Morocco. That's beautiful. Bristlecone pines in the Great Basin National Park in Nevada. Incredible. Did you know that Yoken enjoys bird watching? I knew this about this. Here he is trying to see the bird and then consulting the textbook, what bird was that? But this was, I think, early on in his bird watching experience. Here is, in fact, other extraordinary photographs of birds that he has taken. The toucan, chestnut mandibled toucan from Costa Rica. The frigate bird from Galapagos. Blue-footed booby from Galapagos. These are some penguins from Argentina, and I think this is fitting because you may know that the next director, the current director, Dr. Corfas, hails from Argentina. And I didn't know this. This was a new fact for me. His first love and choice of profession was acting. Maybe there's some need for drama and acting in securing grant funding. I'm not sure, but possibly. And so here he is, the aspiring actor. And as I recall, he was born to 2 actors. During high school and college, he participated in a lot of radio plays and on national radio and had minor parts in TV shows. His only movie appearance, though, I understand, was in a commercial for laundry detergent. Did you know Yoken loves soccer? I also did not know this, but he hails from Germany, and soccer is an obvious love for Yoken. He coached youth teams here in the U.S. For more than 10 years, and you can see the kids highlighted his shirt by calling him the great soccer coach. I am certain he was incredible. Here, he also is he is a wonderful family man, and here he is shown with grandchildren Palomi and Adhi. He's married to his lovely wife, Helga, who has stood by his side for many, many years. She's an amazing woman, an amazing cook. They actually have 2 children, Miriam and Daniel, and these are their 2 grandchildren who are pictured here. So looking back, we asked for memories from some of the Kresge faculty members to share with you today. We're going to assemble all of the memories provided into a special book that we will provide to Yoken. But we are going to share a few of them with you today, and this one is hysterical. After a long day of house hunting, when Dr. Keith Duncan was a new faculty member, they were planning dinner at John Middlebrook's house, and Helga and Yoken picked up Keith and his wife in a tuxedo, and then admonished them that they were not properly dressed and did they need to go back to change clothes. And when they arrived at the Middlebrooks home, you can see that they were dressed in the typical classic jeans and sweater attire. The mix of shock and relief was accompanied by Yoken leaning in and whispering, "Helga and I are going to the opera after dinner." That is a great story. That is classic. That's a great one. And his current fellow provided this reflection: "I have never seen a professor like Dr. Schacht in Taiwan. He is so kind and willing to teach his students how to do the research correctly. My memories of Dr. Schacht in his office and conference room to discuss science, presentation, and papers are unforgettable. I really appreciate his instruction and help when I am in the U.S." And Yoken actually started many traditions as the Kresge Hearing Research Institute director and before. They have a post-canoe trip backyard picnic and the NYPD, which is not the New York Police Department, but the New Year party with the director. He took the lead at both events in assuring that his guests were treated well, even during the summer when Helga was in Europe and his home was without power for several days before and during the picnic. In the summer, one pictures Yoken standing at the grill. In the winter, Helga's soups are memorable. But the NYPD that brings the fondest memories was the year that Yoken confidently lit all of the candles on his Christmas tree while all in the room full of guests were making mental notes about the fastest escape route should that tree ignite. He pulled it off without a hitch, and it was beautiful and pure Yoken. And Peggy Vanderwood is one of our admin assistants. And her reflections are that he and his wife have been gracious hosts to his whole department every summer at their home. He's involved with his staff even on the annual canoe trips. His office door is open to visitors as often as possible. With words, actions, and gifts, he has generously shown his staff appreciation. So now the mic is open for those who wish to make comments? Do you have any slides?
I do. I hope they're here.
Yeah, keep going.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Hanukkah. I think it's a great day today for this special event because it is the birthday of Ludwig van Beethoven. He would have been very proud of what we are accomplishing here. And so I join the others who spoke so nicely in welcoming Gabriel and saying thank you to Jochen. Gabriel will have his style impact our life for a while, so we'll give him the chance, and I'll stick with a thank you and share with you some of the Jochen style which has influenced us over the years and luckily will continue to do so for a while. Style is everything. What I did was collect some real emails, and I have documentation for that were received from Jochen in the last 10 or so years. Male odor could even influence human clinical trials. If a male doctor injects you with a new kind of pain medication, do you feel less pain compared to a female doctor? Well, the result was positive, and Jochen sent us all the article to review the data and how it was done. And I don't know if this is part of the team that did the experiments or not, but obviously one has to be careful who does the surgeries. Here's another email from Jochen. Yes, there will be a KHRI summer picnic this year. Contrary to my announcement of the last picnic a couple years ago, I have decided to have one absolutely very final last ultimate picnic. I think everybody wants to see more, and in that I want to acknowledge Helga's contributions over the years to the picnics. It's been wonderful. Thank you. I was told that our hard-working lunchroom fridge needs a rest over the holidays and will be shut off for cleaning. This is from a previous year. Please remove any of all items by Monday, December 23rd at 3 p.m. Sorry, but we'll have to throw away everything remaining by 3:01 p.m. Enjoy the holidays as much as our fridge will. It's a nice style. So if you don't know Jochen, you may think these are terse and sometimes cynical, but actually he's a warm person and he's caring, and that's his ways to show it, and it's been appreciated. This was actually to me, not to the entire faculty. The university policy on sabbaticals got it reversed. It should be 1 year of service followed by 6 years of sabbaticals. That sounded so good that I decided not to go on a sabbatical and wait until they actually get it right. Plus, who needs to go on a sabbatical when you can have a good life here? That came when Jochen was assembling people to edit or write and edit a book. First of all, I wish you a happy and productive new year. And talking about productivity, let me remind you, kindly and gently, that the complete first draft of your chapter is due March 1st, just in case you didn't know what to do over the holidays. Please think about items for discussion. I'd really like substantial input from you and your ideas and suggestions for Otto, KHRI, and the world in general if you are so inclined, which is very typical and very kind, and the global approach and understanding is much appreciated. So thank you, Jochen and Helga.
We're blessed by having wonderful photographers in our department. So Yoash is also a wonderful photographer. I suspect you took many of these wonderful photographs. So thank you for sharing them with us and for your lovely remarks. I love the emails. So there is, you perhaps got an element, there is a bit of German precision with when you get to know Yoken very well. So would anybody else in the audience care to make comments, brief comments? If not, we'll move on with the program. I wanted to, pardon? Greg, please. Never one at a loss for words. Welcome, Greg. Absolutely. Please do.
Well, it's wonderful. And Carol, thanks for planning this. Yoken, as you know, a lot of arm twisting it took to get you to be director, but you've done a marvelous job. And this gathering really reflects on how important scientifically and culturally within the university the Kresge Hearing Research Institute has been. But what hasn't been said, and as former chair of the clinical side of the department, we haven't really focused very much on how important Kresge was to the clinical side of ENT here at the University of Michigan. And so, you know, the clinical department is now 110 years old, and fully half of that time we were the home mothership for Kresge Hearing Research Institute. And the institute really set us apart from other clinical departments of ENT throughout the country and throughout the world. And it gave us a unique position, allowed us to recruit some of the very best and brightest clinical residents and fellows to our program. Joe Miller headed our first resident training grant, T32 grant, that again set us apart from other clinical training programs. And most of those trainees did research in the Kresge Hearing Research Institute. So the clinical side of the department really benefited greatly from this marvelous collaboration with our research institute. So I just wanted to thank you from the clinical side, historically, the important role that Kresge's played in making ENT at Michigan, we think, the best ENT department in the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf, for those comments. They're very much appreciated. Yes, Tom, yes? Okay, we've got a couple more coming forward. Which of you want to go first?
Hearing Yoash's wonderful presentation about the emails reminded me that I'm somewhat of a Luddite. And when we first got email, Yoken would use it right away. And when there was something I needed to know, he would print it out, label it email, and tape it to the front of my monitor. Thanks, Yoken. I never would have got it otherwise.
Tom Carey, former Associate Chair of Research and longtime faculty member, now Dr. Bill Smith.
I wanted to say something about Yoken, but I was afraid to because I wanted to compliment him on all his teaching in biochemistry, and I'm afraid now that Carol will charge me for all the hours that he put in. But he he actually teaches a very large section of our undergraduate course. That's a very well attended course, about 150 to 200, well, I guess even more now. And he won the EBS Teaching Award a couple of years ago for his efforts. And anyway, I couldn't let that go because he's been such a terrific, he has a joint appointment in biochemistry, and he's been such a terrific joint appointee. It's been wonderful to have him. So thanks, Yochen.
Well, thank you all for your comments. Dr. Schacht and his wife generously provided the leadership gift to establish the Jochen Schacht Endowed Lectureship Fund. Guest lecturers chosen by Kresge faculty will be promising investigators in the early stages of their career, and it will provide hearing scientists with opportunity to have meaningful discussions with rising international leaders in the field, sparking potential for further collaboration. So we're very, very excited about this new endowed lectureship fund, and thank you, Jochen, for your meaningful leadership gift. So the time has now come for Dr. Jochen Schacht to provide comments of his own.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon. A bit overwhelming, but that's to be expected on occasions like this. Thank you all for your words. Thank you for the introduction, Dean Woolliscroft and Associate Dean Kunkel, Yoash, Tom Carey, who else? Oh, Bill Smith, where is he? Thank you. So we are gathered here for a transition event, but much that has been said really goes back to my time before I was director, and in a way that's understandable, because my 45 years of history at U of M probably have blurred some of the lines, and that allows me to blur some of the lines too. So indeed, it was 4 decades that Walter Work was chair of Odo and hired me, although he really had absolutely no idea why Merle Lawrence, of all things, wanted a biochemist on his faculty. And now, 4 department chairs later, thank you, Carol, not only for your kind words, but really for making my recent years as director so enjoyable with your enthusiasm for research and your unwavering support for Kresge. Thank you, and keep it up. Promise? Yes. You heard it. Let me backtrack for a moment. Why am I standing here now? First and foremost, we have to blame, and I have to thank, Bernie Agronoff. Where can I advance the slides? There we go. I have to, Bernie Agronoff, my then postdoctoral advisor, never mind the position of the caption there. Bernie is the one in the middle. Bernie, one of the most creative scientists I have ever met and a fantastic mentor. He told me one day to visit an institute whose name I had never heard before and look at a job that I really did not want. What am I supposed to do there? I said. There is no such thing as a biochemistry of hearing. Very true, said Bernie. And that is precisely the point why you should take this job. I would like to thank him personally. Bernie just sent me a note today that he cannot leave the house. He has a terrible cold and is staying in bed. So in absentia, Bernie, thank you for what you did and speedy recovery. Well, little did I know at the time that I would stumble from one of the foremost neurochemistry laboratories into the embrace of two giants in the field of auditory science, Merle Lawrence and Joe Hawkins. Joe Hawkins, a veritable Renaissance man, a gifted educator and an exceptional scholar, and he became a lifelong mentor and friend. But that relationship developed later. As a young faculty colleague, I was so intimidated by Merle Lawrence and by Joe Hawkins that it took me years until I could bring it over myself to address them by their first names. So Merle Lawrence, whose leadership style I found exemplary, setting a standard by his own work, protecting and supporting the faculty, guiding but not micromanaging, creating a thriving intellectual atmosphere, and enabling everybody to live up to their best potential. And I owe him my career a second time. After a couple of years at Kresge, Merle submitted my project as a supplement to an ongoing program project grant that he had. And that, at the time, was a surefire way of adding a young faculty to an existing program. Nothing could go wrong. So Merle called me into his office after the pink sheets had come in. Application denied, with the words, and I still remember them, there are established methods to analyze the auditory system. There's no reason for Dr. Schacht to propose new and untried approaches. Merle sitting at his desk, Joe Hawkins standing next to him, and I already had in my thoughts written my obituary. Never mind, said Merle. Keep doing what you're doing. Years later, I asked him, I said, Merle, why the heck did you not heed the peer review and kick me out? He shrugged his shoulders and said, I really don't know. I think Joe and I just knew better. I can only hope that I was able, to a small extent, to emulate Merle's example as a director. I tried. And I received a lot of help when I took over Kresge Hearing. I inherited a flourishing research enterprise from Joe Miller and a receptive and cooperative faculty, well, most of the time, and entered into a situation which overall, and despite the usual ups and downs, made my years as director stimulating and rewarding. But many pieces had to come together. Fortunately, we were supported by a great staff in the individual laboratories, by technical expertise from Chris, from Dwayne, from David in the shops, and by an administrative staff now consisting of Cassie and Jackie, who is out of town, Debbie, Peggy, Sue, Diana, Gary, who consistently excelled at organizing picnics, potlucks, birthday, and holiday parties. And rumors have it that they also get occasionally distracted from these tasks and then provide a most efficient and flawless support for grants, personnel matters, and related issues. But there's a serious side to the fun. The picnics, the town halls, the cookie hours with the director, all these events are illustrations of the point that the best organizations are run by real people, after all, and that the human element is a crucial for a resourceful environment that fosters personal growth, work satisfaction, and ultimately success. So thank you all, those whom I mentioned and those whom I didn't mention. You've all contributed. Well, you heard, sadly, with my departure as director, the summer picnics at our house will become history, but we have a firm commitment from Dr. Corfas to continue the tradition. Now, invariably, there are two questions that I get asked on occasions like these. Number one, what has been your greatest accomplishment? And number two, how do you get along with that new director of yours? Let me tackle the second question first. There was indeed a potential conflict brewing in July, shortly after Dr. Corfas took over. A conflict of loyalty, one might call it, related to the events in Brazil that month. But in a truly magnanimous gesture, Dr. Corfas settled the issue by graciously conceding that I might indeed root for Germany in the World Cup soccer final against Argentina. And the outcome was amicable. Germany got the World Cup, Argentina got Kresge. And so we all won. And after just a few months with you, I know we made the right choice. Together with Carol's support, you heard her promise, you will achieve great things for the Institute. We are all looking forward to years of your leadership. Welcome, Gabriel. And now to my greatest accomplishment. So the first time I was asked this question, I was really set back, and my spontaneous response was, how the heck can I know I'm not done yet? But then on second thought, what really matters in our profession? We are scientists, we are educators. What really matters, what are the most formidable challenges, more so than publications and grants? We have a daunting responsibility for the careers and lives of those who pass through our labs and clinics as our students and fellows. If you fail to get a grant, you try again. If you fail a young person, you failed for life. I'm personally deeply indebted to great mentors who shaped my career, and I've tried to give some of this back to my trainees. And if they have come out of my lab and our institute for the better and well prepared for career and life, this I would consider my greatest accomplishments. And something else crossed my mind in this context. As I was listening to what was being said about me here this afternoon, I felt a bit like in a dreamland of science, lifted out of reality. There was a list of success stories when we all know that everyday life has its disappointments and failures. Perhaps those are being ignored, rightfully so, on occasions like this, but they shape us well as success, and sometimes they shape us even more. And often we can learn more from a fiasco than through a triumph, and then we can rise from the ashes. That is a message that we all have to keep in mind. And not only that, but it's important to pass along so that our young people do not get the wrong impression of a painless world of academia and learn to live with and learn from setbacks. A former trainee of mine wrote me about his experience in my lab and said, "Thank you for allowing me to make mistakes." I cannot think of a bigger compliment. But don't get your hopes up. I will not provide you with a list of all my failures. I'll skip over those as well. And then a final word. My life would not be complete without my family. I'm only a co-PI in this endeavor and can only claim partial credit for success. The major credit goes to Helga, my wife of almost 48 years. Over the years, Helga, you have reminded me, both by example and by word, that there is life outside the lab and the institute, and that I'm also a husband, a father, and now a grandfather. And through you, I have found the balance that allowed me not only to enjoy my job, but stay involved with my family and live my life to a much fuller extent. I'm grateful to you for all these reminders and for much, much more that you have given me. Thank you all for listening.
Well done. So thank you, Jochen, for sharing, for your leadership, for your vision, for your teaching, for your mentorship, for your lessons. And you're not going away. You're staying with us. You're not retiring yet. Someday, perhaps, but it's been extraordinary. It is next my honor to introduce our new director, Dr. Gabriel Corfas, and share a little information about him. He joined us officially July 1st, although I think he made several trips before that, and moved over the course of summer his stuff in his own in a moving van he rented. It only took 2 trips, I understand, as well as his entire laboratory. Prior to joining us, he was the director of basic research in otolaryngology at Boston Children's Hospital, which is part of Harvard. He's on the faculty at Harvard University. He's a brilliant regenerative medicine researcher involved in a neuroscientist who studies molecular mechanisms involved in the development, function, and maintenance of the nervous system. And he has used this knowledge to develop new therapies to treat them. He has also recently made significant strides in regenerative medicine as it relates to the inner ear, and I will share that news shortly. But first, you can see he traveled around the world to be trained. Got a bachelor's in science in Argentina, and a master's of science and a PhD at the very famous Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. He received his postdoctoral training at the Washington University School of Medicine in the Department of Anatomy and Neurobiology, and then went on to become a research fellow in neurobiology at Harvard Medical School. Since he only joined us in July, and he's already had 2 major press releases shown here, showing how people in his laboratory restored hearing in deafened mice, pointing to the way to new potential therapies for humans who lose hearing. And these beautiful pictures tell the story of the importance of supporting cells in this work. So we look forward to many great and wonderful things to come. Fast facts about Dr. Corfas. What was one of the first places you explored in Michigan after you moved here? The Arboretum, and he lives very close to the beautiful Arboretum, one of my favorites in Ann Arbor. And he saw people canoeing down the river and inner tubing, so he and his partner, Lisa, who is a member of the faculty of the psychiatry department, she is a psychologist. She bought tubes and joined the crowd, and when they got a little closer, they discovered most of them were students, and mostly they were drinking beer. And we asked him what other parts of our campus he's been able to visit, and he has actually visited a lot of important things already. The Art Museum, the Natural History Museum, and Hill Auditorium, where he attended a concert. Great places. What does he like to do in his spare time? Learning how to live in a house. Until now, he's lived in apartments, hailing from Boston most recently. He loves reading and listening to music and cooking and spending time with family and friends as well as traveling. Any special talents? And again, you're in good stead. The menu may change a little bit from the German to the Argentinian, but he likes barbecuing Argentinian styles. So my early observations, I'm really excited that he is here to lead the Kresge Institute into the future. He's an inspirational and visionary leader. He's a brilliant researcher and an innovator, and he strives to bridge the gap between the clinic and the lab. He's an extraordinary mentor who's trained not only brilliant scientists, but also brilliant leading clinician scientists. So we are lucky and fortunate to have recruited him away from Harvard to the better university, the University of Michigan here in Ann Arbor. Welcome. Would you like to make some comments? Thank you.
You don't mind? Okay.
You gonna close it?
Yeah, I will use my laptop. And thank you very much, Carl, for the kind introduction. And it would take me a second to set up my computer. We that use Macintosh have a hard time dealing with those primitive PCs. But we'll do. So first of all, I would like to say that if I'm taller now than a few seconds ago, it's because I'm standing on a few pieces of paper that I estimate are equivalent to the publications of the 3 previous directors of the Institute. And I just hope that eventually I will be able to contribute so much that the next one it may have the risk of falling. It took me a while to calculate that number, but I hope it's approximate enough. So thank you, Carol, for the introduction, and thanks everybody for coming here. I would like to start by reflecting for a moment on Jochen. And I'm not the only one, but I think he's very well deserved. And I would like to focus on the experience about his qualities as a scientist, a leader, which I experienced firsthand as a test subject. I'm speaking about the moment Jochen decided to check publicly if I had what it takes to be the next director of the Institute. It was summer of 2014, just a few months ago. We had not yet been here. We just came here with Lisa and the fellows in my lab to check the lab and prepare for the move. And it was the time for the Kresge Hearing picnic. And so we joined the crowd. And it was then that Jochen showed his scientific approach to testing leadership, really, my skills, while at the same time demonstrating his. So in figure 1, you can see Jochen describing very carefully about what's going to happen, the protocol of the experiment, the purpose. And also you can notice that we have similar taste in summer clothing. Figure 2 shows that Jochen, following OSHA requirements, providing me with the appropriate protective equipment. He then proceeded to bring me, me as well as the subject of the experiment, to the hot coals where the ultimate test of leadership will take place. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if the pictures are showing well, but I hope. So, as any good teacher, he first demonstrated his versatile didactic prowess. He firstly showed me the appropriate and expected technique, even without wearing the protective gear himself. So he's very, fearless. And eventually, as a good mentor, he gave me, with the confidence of a seasoned master, he gave me the opportunity to prove myself worthy of the title of the KHRI director and the host of the next KHRI lunch picnic. But apparently, I passed the barbecue test. And Jochen already mentioned the issue about the World Cup. So I confess that having barbecued since I was a child in Argentina, I felt quite confident I could do it, I could pass the test. And even more, given that I felt that Jochen, and particularly Helga, were really eager for me to succeed. But now I would like to move to other matters. And first, I want to thank you, Carol, for giving me the trust and the opportunity to lead the Kresge Institute. I value and admire your vision, your leadership, your belief in science, which is rare in otolaryngology departments, I have to confess, I've been there, and your determination and your energy and your optimism. And I think that the future for the Institute and for the department is bright. I also want to thank Dean Woolscroft and Kunkel as well for their support. I need to thank the previous directors, Jochen, Joe, for the work you have done to prepare the Institute and carried, leading it along these years and passing me a torch that is, I hope, is very easy to carry. I think that is remarkable in some way that an institute, the leaders of the institute, both of you stayed for about 14 years as leaders, and also the same for Lawrence, and then you stayed on into the institute, which speaks about the institute appreciating its leaders and their legacies. And that's very important for me, and I think that everybody thank you for all what you have done for the institute and what you will be continue doing it, because you're not going. Finally, I need to acknowledge the students, fellows, and postdocs and technicians that have worked in my lab for many years. And they worked very hard, and they made the scientific discoveries that really brought me here. Without them, I would not be having this chance to lead this institute. So just to give you a brief idea of what I see the mission of the Institute, I believe that the Institute will continue using neuroscience to understand and cure hearing loss and vestibular disorders. And this is, as it's been forever, it is a multidisciplinary approach. Neuroscience involves many different techniques, many different aspects of looking at the biology of the nervous system. And I want to continue that tradition and just bring new opportunities to the Institute to explore different aspects. Now, for those who are not familiar with the inner ear and the auditory system, here you can see just a diagram of the inner ear, which with its cochlea, the cochlea and the vestibular system that are responsible for receiving sensory information, which passes through these exquisite cells, the mechanoreceptive hair cells, which then through many layers and steps in complex circuits goes to the cortex, where it can process information. And hearing loss and vestibular disorders, which are caused by defects at any of the steps in this complex circuitry, are some of the most common chronic disorders, and it results in loss of quality of life to millions of patients and their families, as well as to high costs to society. Hearing is necessary for communication, the communication between a child and his parents, at work, also to enjoying pleasures of life like music, as well as just our daily life of walking in the street and knowing that a car is about to hit you. And losing these senses is terrible, and it's really very prevalent. There are 50 million Americans which experience hearing loss. About 20% of Americans have tinnitus, which is really disruptive. And hearing loss occurs in about 90% of these cases, which is very, very devastating for many of patients. 1 in 5 teens have now hearing loss. And this is just increasing because of the new devices that allow us just to put a lot of high-volume music into our ears. And veterans, people involved in the military, are usually exposed to high levels of sound, and many of them come back with very severe hearing loss. And there are recently evidence that hearing loss may contribute to cognitive decline with aging, accelerating it, suggesting that it's not only that we need to rescue the hearing, but also it's important to maintain cognitive function and mental health in an aging population. And vestibular defects are also very important. The overall prevalence of vestibular dysfunction in the United States population, age 40 and older, is about 35%, 69 million Americans, an amazing number. And individuals with vestibular dysfunction have very high increased probability of having injuries. Now, there is no drug in the market today to treat either hearing loss or vestibular disorders effectively. Very few therapeutic approaches can help many of the patients, millions of people that have these problems. And part of the mission of the Kresge Hearing Research Institute is to try to solve this gap. And the faculty, the amazing faculty of the Institute, have been generating a lot of important insights into this field and trying to make progress in bringing the therapies for the future. And I envision that the Institute will continue to do this and increase the spectrum of research areas to bring more progress to treating hearing loss as well as vestibular problems. So the Institute investigates the basic mechanisms of auditory and vestibular function when thinking about basic science. And my belief is that understanding really the basis of normal biology is what we need to do in order to create the new therapies for any aspect of disease. And given the nature of the nervous system and the auditory and vestibular system, this has to be something that is interdisciplinary and includes people doing physiology, cell and molecular biology, and biochemistry, looking at development and aging as well as the anatomy. And this research that is being done and will continue to be done by the Kresge faculty is devoted in some ways to start understanding how can we prevent hearing and vestibular loss, or can we restore it after trauma? That involves regenerative medicine, like bringing back hair cells, supporting cells, or synapses in the peripheral auditory system, which is aligned with the important efforts in the University for Regenerative Medicine. We have to learn how to effectively deliver drugs to the inner ear, and the Institute excels in using viral vectors and other techniques, and we will continue working on that. And of course, continuing with the leading efforts in the Institute regarding cochlear implants, we have to improve them and make them better. Tinnitus, as I mentioned, is a key problem, and we hope that to enlarge the faculty working in this important field and bring new technologies. And finally, it's important to improve the early identification of people who are at risk of having hearing loss in order to treat them in a timely fashion. So to do this, we are all engaged now in a few initiatives. One of them is recruiting of new research faculty. This is a priority because we need to bring new blood, young investigators that bring new technologies and new questions that can integrate into the fabric of the Institute and collaborate with existing faculty to enhance what we are doing now. We have to enhance the ties also between the laboratories and the clinic. The only way we are going to be able to translate and improve the treatment of patients is by working together, clinicians who understand what the patients need, together with the scientists who are going to try to develop the new techniques. Finally, also, we need to work together with other groups in the university to realize the goal of using regenerative medicine to develop cures. And there are several natural groups in which we can establish strong relationships, particularly in the neuroscience groups, including psychiatry and other groups, as well as working together with people in biomedical engineering to improve drug delivery and devices, as well as other groups. And we are open to collaborate with anybody who's going to help the mission, as well as we may be able to contribute to their missions as well. And finally, it's critical importance, and the Institute has a long history of work like this to enhance the experience of our fellows, because they are the next generation of what's going to happen in our research area. And I wanted just to finish by showing you an example of the satisfaction we can get sometimes when the work we do have an impact that reaches people that are beyond science. And as Carol mentioned, we had recently a paper that showed that we can, using transgenesis, expressing specific molecules, help mice that lose hearing be restored through in the lab. And we do the work. We try to get good insights into the science and the biology. But when we see our work reaching the global population, it's exciting. I wanted to show you.
This episode of D News is brought to you by Canon Pixma Pro professional inkjet printers, exactly as you envisioned.
This is from the Discovery Channel.
Julian.
What?
We're rolling.
What?
Are you deaf?
What? What's up, my knowledgeable audiophiles? Julian here for D News. I don't know if you've heard, but scientists have recently made a breakthrough restoring the hearing of mice who had been deafened by loud noises. Researchers from the University of Michigan and Harvard Medical School manipulated the genes of mice so their inner ears made more of a protein, neurotrophin 3, or NT3. Then they partially deafened them with loud noise, presumably by blasting Nickelback. After 2 weeks, mice with increased levels of NT3 showed much improved hearing compared to the control group. So, how does it work? Well, the nerve cells connected to the hair follicles in your cochlea have a special structure called a ribbon in the synapse. So named because it looks nothing like a ribbon. Ribbon synapses allow for super fast, precise, and sustained neurotransmission, which makes them ideal for transmitting sight and sound. In your ear, these synapses get damaged with noise and age. That's where the NT3 comes in. NT3 helps keep older neurons alive and promotes the regeneration of new neurons and synapses. Dr. Gabriel Corfas, who led the study, is optimistic that increasing NT3 can restore hearing in partially deafened humans too. He even believes it can be done with a drug instead of the gene therapy used for the mice. Now that's big news considering that 50 million Americans have hearing loss in at least one ear, and 47% of adults over 75 have difficulty hearing. When you consider that earbuds are ubiquitous and we can project basically a rock concert directly into your ears, that percentage is going to be much higher by the time my generation is septuagenarians. So thanks, Dr. Corfas. I'm going to go ahead and keep rocking out on the subway guilt-free, even if it's clearly weirding everybody out. For more
Well, so there you have it. Sometimes people don't interpret exactly what we mean in our papers, but at least they are paying attention, and we hope to gather the enthusiasm of the general population, because at some point the work we do has to reach them, and they are the ones who are paying for the work we are doing in the labs, and they have to know and hopefully have faith in that we can help them and solve important health problems. So I am excited about taking the leadership. Jochen, you've been also, and you continue to be a great advisor, and I appreciate every day. And also Joe. And Carol, your support is amazing, and I, as Jochen said, he took your word for it. So, and thank you everybody for coming.
So thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful afternoon. Dr. Corfas, thank you for your comments. welcome to Michigan, and we know our collective future is very bright. We are truly blessed to have such a storied tradition of leadership excellence here at Michigan in general, and certainly in the Kresge Hearing Research Institute. Tonight is really a wonderful celebration of that tradition. This now concludes our formal presentation of the evening, but you are all invited out the door to join us in the lobby for some refreshments, and thank again all of you for coming.